I was in a class one time, a theology class, Bible class, and an African-American young man, he raised his hand and he said, "Prof, what contributions do you know of that people of color have contributed to the faith, whether historically, theologically, whatever?" And he put his hand on his chin for a second, and he said, "Well, you all can really sing. You can't imagine the disposition of many of us in the class who were, it wasn't many of us, we were thrown off by it." But then I went to another class, and I was in my church history class, and this, my church history class, both of them were white, so this Bible professor was white, and this church history professor, he was white. And we're in there, and he starts waxing eloquent on Augustine. And he says, he bends over his podium, he looks at me, I'm sitting in the front, he said, "I know we use the word Latin for him, but he's actually African." Now you gotta understand, I'm a 22-year-old black dude in class, never heard that Augustine was African. Augustine. And I was like, wow. And I'm thinking to myself, why haven't I been told this? So over the years, it's kind of been something like, Mary, she treasured it in her heart kind of thing. And over the years, if you look at pretty much most of the paintings of the church fathers, the theologians, the apologists, you pretty much believe that they were white men and women. But as you begin to study, you begin to say Augustine of Hippo. Where is that? Egypt. When you begin looking at Perpetua and Felicity, who some would say are the first African martyrs of the faith, were women of color. When you look at Tertullian, who coined the word Trinity, African. When you look at Origen, African. Cyprian, African. St. Anthony, African. I can keep going. Athanasius, who defended who Jesus is, the eternality of Jesus Christ as the eternal Son, and his two natures at the Council of Nicaea, African. Pachomius, one of the greatest monastic leaders during the monastic period, African. Shenouda of Atreat, of southern Egypt, African. And when you look at, during the Crusades, Islam came into southern Egypt, going into what's called Nubia. When they tried to go in, they tried to fight the Nubians, and if I could use some street lingo, they couldn't handle the smoke that came from the Nubians. They didn't want the smoke. So they stopped. They had to make a treaty with them boys, but guess what they were? One of the oldest Christian nations, the Nubians. Do you know, I'm studying, I'm looking back, and I'm in like my New Testament class. And they gave us 3 families of manuscripts. I'm nerding out on y'all a little bit right now. Gave us 3 families of manuscripts. The Western manuscripts, Alexandrian manuscripts. So there's those Western conflations, Byzantine manuscripts, Alexandrian manuscripts. And I never knew that most of our translations that say most earlier manuscripts don't have this. These were transmitted in Alexandria, Egypt, Africa. Africa isn't Southern Europe. Egypt isn't Southern Europe. It isn't Middle East. It's Africa. And I know we're trying to make it a part of Europe and part of Asia to kind of decode it because of all of the beautiful things that happen. But do you know that Christianity thrived in Africa for 1,000 years, in particularly Egypt, and still in the Eastern Church with the Coptic Church? Why is all of this important? Because we have to start expanding our stories. And we have to use the language that helps identify this. I can tell you from experience that online, going back to our first session, people were saying Christianity is the white man's religion, and it was created at Nicaea by Europeans. And we would hear all of these things. Y'all don't know what we deal with, man, in our context. We're not dealing with some of the stuff y'all dealing with. You know, the Jesus Seminar. Our people don't care nothing about the Jesus Seminar and all that. They're dealing with identity issues, significance, dignity, and identity issues. And so as I'm dealing with this question, we began a campaign online of about 20 of us. We called ourselves Urban Apologists. And what we began doing is we just started doing, this was years ago, we started just doing some videos because we were hearing so much reckless talk from our community about Christianity being the white man's religion. And we started putting out there that Athanasius, as a matter of fact, one of my spiritual sons, this is his clothing line. And he started just putting out those African images to do his own iconography that's separate from the European images. And as we began just defending the faith from the fact that much of the formation of our theology literally post the apologists, the apostles were the apologists, the theologians, the church fathers, and a lot of them were African. Guess what began to happen? You rarely hear anymore people online saying Christianity is the white man's religion. And literally, and this is by the grace of God, so many people got equipped with it that they started using those resources as mechanisms to kind of shut that down. Now what's beginning to happen, we've gotten emails, we've gotten responses of people saying that this work has either kept me in the faith, this work has brought me back to the faith, and this work has strengthened my faith. Listen, why is this all important because I'm gonna be honest with you, blacks generally, many blacks generally don't trust whites or they're controlling of a narrative. And so what ends up happening is because of stuff like whitewashing of Christianity, because of stuff like what we're talking about right now, there's a lack of trust there. And because of that lack of trust now, there's a belief that Christianity was in their hands, and since Christianity was in their hands, because of the damage they've done during the centuries, Christianity is false. So we've had to do a lot of work, and now we need churches like you, we need groups like you to begin changing those images. I can't tell you how many of my white siblings who have adopted black children have talked about how now that they have adopted black children, they're beginning to have their eyes open in ways they was like, I was tripping. They was like, that's what they use that terminology too. They say, I was tripping, brother Mason, I was wilding. That's what they said to me, you know. I said, I know. They said, how can I resource my child? They ask me questions, everything from how to do their hair to, which I'm not a stylist, but all the way up to, man, how do I make sure that I affirm their dignity? Listen, if the church fathers were any other ethnicity, we would tell you and be honest about it. Our issue is, we're not trying to paint history black. We're trying to just be honest about what history really was. And guess what this does? This shows us and gives us more missiological sensitivity and opens up doors and develops common ground in great ways. That's why Colossians 4 says, act with wisdom towards outsiders. Sophia, or in the Hebrew, chokmah. Why is that important? Because that gives us common ground for the gospel. And so we're not changing history. We're loving people through telling the history of our faith truthfully. And I hope we can use this as a way to image in our Sunday school classes, image better, publishing companies, image better in our presentations of people. We don't know that, you know, Mark was a Cyrenian Jew. He's an African Jew. So as we tell the truth about this and we engage this more, I guarantee you it will melt barriers that helps more unity than it does division.